Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Real Talk podcast, where we just talk about issues in life and faith and honestly, just whatever we're thinking about in the moment. And we are excited because, man, we just reopened our Sunday gathering to have people back into it after months of going online. And I can speak on behalf of every pastor out there. It is so much better to have people in the room than do it online. And so we just want to reflect on that, just the good, the bad, just what it was like for us. And so, man, John, why don't you just kick it off, man? What was encouraging about being in the room with people, about actually having people with us?
There were so many things, and you say it so well. Man, there's an excitement that we feel being reopened now for public gatherings. Yep. You know, I mean, the online thing was cool for a few weeks, and then it was just like, this is...
Back in March?
Yeah, back in March. It's been a long year. And so obviously, and it's so funny, man, because we did reopen for 3 months in the summer, but it was like right when Houston spiked. And so we reopened, but didn't go super well. And then like the last service, we had like 20 people or something in a big old room. Yeah. So that did not go well. This one went much, much better. What was encouraging, man, lots of things. One was seeing faces of people that I had not seen in a long time. You don't realize how much like that gathering really keeps you connected by just seeing somebody. You know, we can't be best friends with everybody. We're going to be closer to some than others. We've been really close to a lot of our core people in this season, and we can talk about that. But there's a lot of people that like maybe, you know, we're not as close to in terms of we don't get one-on-one with them, or we're not in a group with them or something, but you see them every Sunday, and seeing them every Sunday, saying a quick hi, talking a little bit, how's it going? It just really connects you to those people, and to see faces in person that I had not seen in a long time, it gave life to my soul. Yeah. We have this one lady who's a older African-American lady who is in a wheelchair. Her name's Juanita, and I had not seen her in months, and just hearing her voice and seeing her presence was so meaningful, so beautiful, and just seeing how happy she was to be there was so cool. And so there's a lot of faces, I mean, maybe 75 faces I have not seen in person in a long time. And so that was powerful. Also new people, man. That was really cool. There were people that are part of our church now or have been kind of checking out the church, and I met them for the first time in person, and that was a really cool moment. It was showing some of the fruit of this season. Also people that maybe haven't been walking with us, but they heard we were reopening, and so they came. And so that was super encouraging, because I think one of the frustrations for a lot of pastors is that this has not been a season of a lot of fruit. Yeah. For any church or any pastor, like, you know, at first we thought this was going to be a season where a bunch of people were going to like get saved and come to God, and honestly, they've run to politics more, you know, and so in the election, you know, so the idea that like new people are engaging with the church was super encouraging. Like people, in light of everything going on, are like, man, I need Jesus. I need to be around His people. I need to get serious about my walk with God. And so we saw new people, first-time visitors, maybe more than probably an average service that we'll see that came out, which is really encouraging. And lastly, man, just the energy of like, man, music, like music, like online is cool, you know, but in the room, you know, because we had got like a whole new sound system, and then we shut down. And so like we were like investing in this room and making it like our family meeting space as a church. And then we couldn't use it. It's like sitting there getting like cobwebs on it and stuff, you know. And then just preaching. It's cool to preach to a camera. Maybe preaching in some ways translates better online, but preaching to people in the room who were hungry for it. They were more hungry than normal. I was, you know, it's funny. We built out our stage. So I can see people better. And like, I can just tell the people were way more engaged with the sermon. Like they were almost like, I'm glad to be listening to live preaching, you know, and it's just like, you know, like, and we had kid care 5 and under, so people had dropped our kids off. That's another encouraging thing. We had 30 kids? Yep. We had 30 kids 5 and under. For a church like us, that's a huge thing in COVID world. And so there was just a lot of really encouraging things. But man, I think just seeing the people and really the amount of people that turned out was super encouraging. Yeah, what about you, man?
Same for me. I mean, just like going online, like preaching to an empty room is, you know,
dark room.
Yeah, it's like dark room. You feed off the energy of people, and you just feel the spirit in that place. And so I definitely felt that on Sunday. You know, my big thing is just our serve teams in general. It's part of my responsibility here at the church, just to oversee those teams and honestly, it's been rough in the season. You know, like I was talking to another pastor where he said, man, you know, it's one thing to kind of invite people back to attend church. It's another thing. It's like another step to be like, hey, will you come serve on reopening Sunday, you know? And so we had, you know, we had a greet team in place. We had like 8 people on that team. We had a kids team. These are people who are stepping up, literally like doing reopening Sunday, missing what's happening in the room so they can serve those like 30 kids. And we had one couple who they kind of connected with us before like COVID hit. So it was like very beginning of the year, and they had come to a couple of Sundays, and then that hit. And I connected with them a little bit over the summer. They've been watching online. They were actually serving on reopening Sunday. And these are people who literally had only come just a little bit before we had to go online only. And so just like all these things just show me that like the Spirit's not dead. The Spirit is very alive, and he's moving in people, and people are excited to be back. And I think that's the biggest thing. We're seeing that like online is cool. We learned online is cool, but it's not the future. And so we're learning that really, we need to be together as the family, and we realize that, and other people are realizing that as well. So that was just super encouraging me to see people actually serving. So let's like switch gears a little bit. Real talk. Let's talk about what's discouraging, because as pastors, sometimes you put on the best face forward, and you try to make it all the positive spin on things. There's the great stuff. So let's get real talk for you. Like, what was discouraging?
Okay, well, yeah. So you said that, so I got to say something now too. It's so funny because I've always thought about that. Like when I was growing up in church, I'm like the pastor, like, we're so excited to be here, and you are, and I go back and forth on like, is that good or whatever. It's like imagine you come to church and like the song ends, it's the welcome, and the guy's like, man, what's up, guys? It's been a rough day, It's just like, like you want to be honest, but it's like you're killing it for everybody else, So
it's like my wife and I are currently fighting.
As a pastor, you've always got to be great or whatever. And so anyway, but no, I like this question because I think this question is like why we do the podcast. I think it's the reason. I think, you want to find a bunch like happy-go-lucky, like, fake stuff. There's a lot of stuff on that, but I think the real talk is stuff that maybe like, sometimes I'm like, man, I feel like we say things that pastors would never say. And so maybe we shouldn't be saying it, but it's just honest. And so, the Bible says to live in the light. So that's what we do. And so, and also I think it helps our people really see, like, even as pastors, we're working through things as well. Yeah. And like, we don't have it all together. And that actually, I think, empowers other people. And even though we're dealing with things, because I mean, like, listen, we're in a pandemic. The church shut down publicly for months and months. It's hurt momentum. We were a new church, and that stinks. And it's not been great for giving, even though giving has been pretty strong. I mean, there's just a lot of negatives in this season. And even though we trust God, we're still wrestling through it. And so some discouraging things about reopening. I'll give you two things, and I want to hear yours. One for me was, we talked about like, it was so amazing and encouraging to see people we hadn't seen in a long time. Like, I got to see him again, What was discouraging was the people that we did not see, the people who I had not seen in a long time that I didn't see last Sunday either.
They didn't show up. Yep.
And so that was like the thing where it's like, I think in this season, what has been so interesting is the core of our church, like the people who were really involved, either like leading a group, leading a team, or like heavily involved in a group or on a team, almost every single one of those people is still with us. A few people moved away for various reasons, like normal, but almost everyone is still with us. And it was really a lot of people who maybe were not super, like they would, back in the day, they would come on Sunday, but they wouldn't really serve. They weren't super involved in community. And so then when all this happened, we weren't super connected to a lot of those people, and we're like, are they still with us? And we were assuming like, oh, well, a lot of these people, I'm sure they're just, waiting for us to reopen the doors, and they'll be there, And I think for some people, like the fact that they were not there, for a pastor, that's hard, because you fear maybe they're, maybe not super passionate about their walk with the Lord, And we had someone that moved, and so they emailed us, told us, hey, we're moving, we're going to go to this place. We're like, yeah, God bless you. That's awesome, But the people you haven't heard anything from. And so that was kind of the discouraging things, is the people that were not there, because as pastors, like we love our people. We love them, And so, if you want your pastor to love you and care about you, then that means that when you leave, like, it's going to be hard, And so if you want it to be okay when you leave, then you better ask for a pastor that doesn't love you or care about you, not invested in you or whatever. So I think for us, like, that was one of the discouraging things. I think the second thing, just to be honest, for me, was like everybody wearing a mask. And that might be ironic because I'm the lead pastor that got up and said, hey guys, this is what we're going to do. And all of our leaders were supportive of it. Mm-hmm. I saw a lot of counsel from different mentors and everyone that I talked to who had already reopened, by the way. So we were getting real data from people. They were like, man, you need to go ahead just for the time being, just tell everyone, every staff and volunteer is required to wear a mask, and then encourage everybody that comes to wear a mask and have masks available. And so we did that. And this is a good lesson and exercise too, where it's like, sometimes people think that everything that we do as a church or everything that I promote that I like but that's not the case because I'm a part of a greater organization. But if our church as a whole decides to be a part of something, and if I'm in the minority, I go with the church because I trust the church, and it's not all about me, right? Yeah. And so it's a good reminder that like as leaders, even we're wrestling with things too. People assume that pastors love everything about the church, but it's just not the case. We're supportive of everything that is, right? But there's moments where maybe we have different preferences, and yeah, it's not all about our preferences, And so that was one thing for me where like, I think it's right that we're wearing masks and obviously I'm the one that said we should do that. But I just, I don't like seeing people in masks and I get some of the frustration with masks, even though I understand why we do it. I think it's a good thing. I get why people get really aggravated by masks because it's like, I want to see your face. Yeah. And when you're preaching to people wearing masks, you feel like you're in like a nightmare, you know? It's kind of creepy, And so, it's just weird. And so it's one of those things like it's the right thing to do, but it's one of those frustrations of this season where it's like, man, I just long for the day when we're not wearing masks because it just covers up so much of your face and you're talking and I can't hear you, and it's just like you
can't see the expression.
I know, and that's the weird. Yeah, you feel like you're not talking to a person in a sense, and so that was another thing too, where we're going to keep doing it for the time being. But one of those things where it's when you think of reopening, you're thinking, oh, we're back, because last time when we reopened, we weren't requiring masks because masks weren't as big of a deal back then. Yeah, and so now we had 150 people, everybody's wearing a mask, I know eventually that will go away, but it's just one of those things where, I look forward to the day when I can see everybody's face. And, I think that God gave us those features for a reason and the ability to communicate like that for a reason. And it just kind of is a reminder of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to come in and you want to see everyone's smiling faces and it's hard, especially when the church is a place where we're singing about liberation and all those kind of things. And it's a good reminder that like the church throughout history has gone through a lot of rough seasons as well, and that's what God leads us through. But I think for me, it's just like discouraging. It's just number one. You mentioned just kind of who is not there, and I think about that as well, and especially just from an organizational standpoint or pastoral standpoint. I reached out to a lot of different people to come and to be a part of it, and to serve on different teams, and if not just come, kind of thing. And I maybe reached out to maybe 20 or 30 people and maybe heard back from half of those, and then the other ones didn't respond at all. And as a pastor, you do you're supposed to love the people, and I love these people so deeply, and I've invested time and energy into that relationship, even some of them during the COVID season. And so it's just it's personally hard to, I guess, be ghosted in that sense. I know they probably don't mean it personally or whatever, but it's man, where are you? We're in a relationship with one another.
Can I say something about that real quick too? I think it's important for people, especially who are listening to this and you're a part of a church and maybe you have a pastor or pastors, that you interact with. I think a good rule of thumb that people don't realize is I think you should expect your pastor to some degree to be as, they will reach out to you as much as you reach out to them, And I think people think the pastor is just going to kind of always be reaching out to me. And but if it's like any relationship, if you never reciprocate, it's I feel like I'm harassing you or something, or I feel like you don't want to talk. And so I think a lot of them, just if you're watching this, it's always good to know, how as often as you reach out to encourage your pastor, you should expect them to encourage you in that same way, right? And I think a lot, because a lot of times it's I know for you, you're often you'll email people and we should have called me. It's well, but you didn't respond to the email. And so if you don't want to email, there's levels, versus if someone's really interacting with you on that and talking and really clear, then you're more likely to give them a call because they want that. Yeah. And so I think it's just important for people to realize that whenever, especially a pastor reaches out, listen, if you're I'm left the church, just tell us, hey, that's okay. Just clarity brings prosperity, But it's almost one of those things that when there's no communication back, it's one of those things where it's you're probably not going to be reached out to because we don't want to. The Bible says that we lead willingly, yeah. The people follow pastors willingly. We don't domineer. We don't force you to, And so any steps like that aren't reciprocated, that makes it hard for us to continue following up. And we tend to engage with the people who kind of communicate that. So that's really important, I think, especially in this season. But yeah. What else, man? What else was discouraging for you?
Well, man, just Yeah, I think for me, and I got to guard myself. I think a lot of people have to guard themselves against like nostalgia and comparing what is with what was. And I'm always reminded, Ecclesiastes says, do not say like, why were the former days better than these? Because that's not wise. And so I always like keep that in my own mind, that like it's never good to compare this present moment to something in the past, because God always has a better future for us. And so I'm just thinking about this moment. You're talking about masks. We're talking about being shut down for all these months. We're talking about missing people. And it's hard not to think back to kind of like New Days, like kind of the first few months, and just the energy and the excitement and the optimism, and just how, we have grown in resiliency and steadfastness, but just, a part of me, the fleshly part of me that I'm trying to sanctify by the power of the Holy Spirit, is just thinking back to that and comparing that to this present moment. And it feels like a long journey ahead, and maybe that's part of it. It just feels like, we ain't gonna bounce back by the end of the year. We're meeting, we're excited about that, but we know it's a long road to getting back to normal, or whatever a new normal is. And so just holding faith and hope and trust into that. So, man, we talked about discouraging a little bit. Let's flip it a little bit. Man, what about surprising? All right, because this is a season full of surprises. So what about for you? What was surprising about reopening?
So I tried to think of, because we already did encouraging. So I tried to like, okay, what was surprising, meaning like maybe an encouraging thing that I did not expect, right? Mm-hmm. Because I expected to see faces I had not seen in a long time. I expected that, right? I expected some new people, right? A few surprising things, like kind of encouraging, I guess I didn't expect. How many people showed up? Yeah. How many people? Like, so we had, I'm not good at math, so maybe 65% of our normal, maybe 60% of a normal Sunday attendance before we had on Sunday, including both in person and online. And that number is very good from what we've heard. A lot of people we've heard, churches are seeing 35 to 50%. Like 50% is really good. And so if for the long haul, if it dips down some and we run about 50% of what we had before, that will be considered to be a lot for a church in this season, based upon like the real data that we're seeing online, as well as talking to the pastor. So I was just honestly surprised by how many people showed up in the room across the different spectrum. Like I said, longtime people, new people. So it was like the room felt really good. It felt like a real, in that sense, it did feel somewhat like a normal church service. It wasn't like, oh, this thing is like dead and not a lot of people are here. So that was one surprising thing. Another surprising thing for me, man, was it felt safe. Like, you can go to places like, I went to Home Depot once, and I've been there a few times actually. I went to, what was it? No, I went trick-or-treating in my neighborhood a few weeks back, and with my kids, and it was packed, and I felt uncomfortable. Like, even though like you're outside, it's probably okay. Like, no matter what you think about COVID, there's like that subconscious, like, I shouldn't be around this many people, running around everywhere. But at church, even though it felt, like there was a good number of people, it didn't feel, I felt safe. Like I felt like everybody was wearing a mask, maybe a few people weren't, but everybody's wearing a mask. We have a really good sized campus. And so it's not like you're kind of narrowly getting through doorways and hallways, We have a really big size, like sanctuary auditorium. And so we're able to spread out more so. And there's a high ceiling, and our stage is built out now. And so there's more space on the stage. And so it just felt very safe. And so that was surprising, because part of me was like, we're going to come back and then it's going to be like, we're doing this because it's the right thing to do, and we're pretty safe, but we're all kind of feeling a little bit uneasy about getting together for a large gathering. And it just didn't feel that way. And most likely probably unless the Lord just wants to do a great work, probably the attendance goes down a little bit. And so that means it probably maybe feels even a little bit more safe in a sense. And so felt totally safe. Nobody felt uncomfortable. Like if people wanted to head out right after, like literally you could show up 5 minutes late to service, so you don't interact with anybody, and you could leave right after. And so it's totally, if you want to gather in person, like this is really a safe environment. And that encouraged me because, number one, now I feel like I can in good conscience invite my friends, even my friends that maybe are taking, who are very, very cautious about all this. I really believe that they'll feel safe. And so even if you're watching this, and you want to come just one time to check it out, which I encourage you to do so if you feel like you can, I really think you'll feel safe. Everyone's wearing a mask. We got sanitizer. It just feels like a good environment. And, the last thing I think was surprising was, maybe this wasn't super surprising, but people were super dialed in to worship. There's more passion, I felt like, during our worship. As I was preaching, people were kind of dialed in. They were ready. And I thought maybe there would be like an awkwardness or a spiritual dryness, or like I got to get back into like engaging with the sermon or taking notes or whatever. No, man, people were primed. They were ready to go. And they showed up. It was hot in the room, and in a good, but not like an unhealthy way, like a passionate, spirit kind of way. It's hot, And it felt really dialed in. It was like we've been waiting for this. And so that was really surprising as well because, man, you get out of a rhythm, like I'm out of a workout rhythm right now. And so like trying to like lift again, I'm like, oh, this is bad, But spiritually, it was just like people were so happy to be there and they were so dialed in. So that was surprising for me. But what was surprising for you?
Yeah, I think attendance was a big one. I was trying to set the team's expectation.
James, a data guy. So
I'm
he's
a data guy.
Numbers,
So like guys, Barna Group's saying this, other pastors are saying this. And so I was pleasantly surprised by our engagement for the first week. And part of that too was we rolled in our 1-year anniversary into that. And so it was kind of like a celebration. We made a very special event. So I was surprised by that. And especially even the number of kids, we have a great, the fact that we have 30 kids on week 1 and we were able to do that in like a safe environment. We have a great new like playground on campus that they were able to go out to. And it just really worked out really well. And I think it bodes for good things for the future as we hope to expand our child care as things get better, So that was number 1. Number 2, honestly, like this is like personally, just like how hard the morning was, just like how much work, like we've been out of a rhythm, I think, of like doing a Sunday gathering and a lot of work goes into that. We say like Sunday mornings are not our Sabbaths, it's a work day for us and we love worshiping along with the church, but it's a lot of work. Yeah. And so I'm just reminded that like we've been doing like online so long that I forget what it's like to be there and just to make sure, behind the scenes that things are going well and you're checking in with team leaders. And so, man, that was a lot for me. And I always joke how like on Sunday mornings, I max out my Apple Watch rings like by like 9 a.m. just because there's a lot going on. And so it's exciting, but it's a lot of work, especially now that we've added live stream into the mix. And so, man, we say we're in person and online until Jesus comes back. And that's a lot of work.
Because James often oversees a lot of like our different teams and leaders and stuff. And so it is like we have less people, more cautious people, and more to do now.
Yeah. And so thank God for our volunteers and people stepping up, because like I cannot be in 4 places at once, and so we really have that core you were talking about is really making it possible. Yeah. The fact that we've had like a live stream team who's been doing this for a couple of months now and they got a rhythm and I just could not be more happy with the way that it turned out, just with our team stepping up and making that possible. So I was really surprised, honestly, by how much work it was for me personally, but also by how well kind of it all turned out. And so just it's an interesting season. So just personally speaking, man, just what's God teaching you in the middle of Corona? It's always a good question to ask ourselves as we go along and a journal about that. So what about you? What's God teaching you right now?
I think what God's teaching me in all of this is, number 1, the resiliency of the church. We can, like, so there have been some, there's been some backwards movement in some ways for sure, but the core of the church has been so resilient. Like, I don't really feel like New Day has been super negatively affected by this. I don't, in terms of like any way that might hinder its future, or we were on this one trajectory of what God was going to do and now we're not, we got to kind of redirect. Like it sets you back in the moment, but not from, I think, where we're going in the end. And so the resiliency of the church, man, like some examples of that have been, like our giving, has been steady. It hasn't gone up this year probably, but I think we're probably on track to have probably the same giving that we had last year financially. That's huge, right? And so I think it just shows like people are committed to their church. The people that really do actually support the church financially in a legitimate way, they're not consumers, because even when they're getting less in a sense, they're still faithful to give. So I think it shows the resiliency of the church. I think it also shows the resiliency of our core as a church. And so it's like, for us, like, man, we've not lost a lot of people like who are either leaders or super involved and plugged in. And so like they're with us, there's a super deep connection. And so, man, like we always say, man, if we can make it through this financially and relationally and spiritually, like, I mean, it's like I trust God if he wants to take us through harder stuff than this, but hopefully he does, God, but it's like, this is considered like a generational thing. And so, and if, all glory to God, but if what we've experienced is one of the worst things that could happen in that sense, then like, man, this thing is really strong and God's really got a strong core and foundation in our church and in a lot of churches. Other things, I think, and we talk about this a lot, the importance of community and serving in your church and being a part of it and not just attending it. I will, for the rest of my life, hammer hard on that. I will hit it so hard. I mean, I will preach it hard. I will preach it from experience now, because, man, if you are connected either in a group or on a team, that creates a resiliency in your faith and in your church experience that, man, you can make it through anything. Like, you can be so resilient. And if you're not connected on that level, if what church means to you is I go either weekly or twice a month, and I get my family or whoever in the car, and I go to the church and I sit in the service, and then I leave and I go home, and that's all. And maybe I chit chat to a few people before and after service. I know a few people, and I go to the service. If going to a service is all church is for you, you don't probably really have a church, honestly. Because when that thing is not there anymore, it's not a real relational or spiritual connection to where you're actually really connected to people deeply in a group or actually giving back on a team. There's a lack of spiritual connection that a season like this has just taken so many people off, and we don't know where they're at. We don't know what they're doing. We've not heard some great stories on how those people are faring in this season spiritually. Maybe they're caught up in politics or whatever. So I just think for me, this season has shown us that we've really got to almost double down on really calling people to really define what church is. Because if you're having a real church experience, you will weather that storm no matter what you go through. But if not, you are vulnerable, and we've seen now those things can happen. And so I think that's a big one for me. It's just I'm going to forever preach on this hard because I've seen so much good. I've seen people go through some really rough times in this, but they have community. They're connected spiritually. It's been hard, but their faith is growing, and you're watching that happen, And so it's so amazing and powerful to see that happen. They're the people that are able to get through this election, and their anxiety is not skyrocketing as a result of it. And so I think that God is showing me that the church is called to be relationally close, and that's good for us. And the last thing I will say, and I know we've both experienced this a lot, the fruit that comes when you invest in your leaders. Man, I've seen that so many times in this season. In this season, I felt called alongside my wife, Halsey, to basically have all of our group leaders come over once a month. And man, it's been amazing. It's been amazing, And I think a lot of times as a pastor, we can both get overwhelmed with all of the people, especially as it grows, because our church has grown. And all the new people come in. And originally, when it was smaller, I felt like I was really, really good friends with every single person. And as it's grown, it's been hard to do that. And I always feel kind of guilty about that, how I don't know everyone super, super well anymore. So I kind of feel like sometimes maybe at times I would even maybe kind of neglect leaders because I was always trying to meet all the new people all the time instead of empowering all of our leaders to care for those people. Yeah. And so I think in this season, investing in leaders, it's just been amazing because we have so many healthy community groups that are functioning. And we have leaders that are caring for people. And so they're being empowered for ministry and leading teams, but then also they're getting poured into as well, because a lot of times if the senior pastor or the lead pastors or whatever, the people that are the elders, a lot of times if they're not caring for the leaders, nobody will. The lay person's not going to make sure all the leaders are doing good, And so for me, I've just seen the fruit and the stability that comes when you really make sure that you're really investing in your core leaders. And so that's going to be a passion in me for the rest of my life, just to see that connection and the fruit that they're producing spiritually. They're able to disciple people and help new people get connected. It's just been an amazing thing. And it's one of those things where I feel like I've got a lot more confidence in the future to really pour into those leaders and have more confidence in them and let them use their gifts and not just always try and kind of be, making sure that I'm best friends with everybody. And so that's been a huge blessing in this season. And I feel like they've actually been encouraging us a lot as well as we've poured into them. It's just this beautiful thing in the church where everyone's caring for each other. And so I just have seen the fruit in that in so many levels. And so those are the things that God's teaching me. But what about you, man? What has God taught you in this season as you've pastored through a pandemic, dude?
The two things that come to mind is one, just how, James chapter 1 says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." And so I think about just how steadfastness and consistency was probably not a value of many people or of the church in the past, but its stock has gone way up in this season, just the value of what it means to have a consistent walk with the Lord and to not rely on others for your own personal discipleship in your walk. And God gives you the church as a means and a tool to help you in your personal discipleship. But just I've seen that those who have really taken their personal walk seriously in the season are the ones who have been the most consistent and the most steadfast. And just how it's a beautiful and hopeful thing to be steadfast in the middle of like a very rocky season.
Yeah.
And so you see people who are very steadfast, and then you see those who are being tossed to and fro by everything that's happening. And so just the importance of like, I'm taking personal ownership over my walk with the Lord, because I don't know what's coming in the future. I don't know if it's pandemic or what, but I want to take that ownership. So that's number one. And then number two, is really just like thinking about just like the church in general, and just its value for like just for us, you know. And we've talked a lot how like, you know, in the past it was like church isn't the building kind of thing, and a lot of people said that, and I think we've just learned that like you need the community. And so like I both of those things are kind of like two sides of the same coin, where like you do need to take personal responsibility for your walk with the Lord, but you cannot do it alone. And that's like the paradox, you know, or like the tension of the Christian life, where you need that personal, and then you also need like the church to walk with you. And so we're seeing the people, like you're saying, who are leaning into community, leaning into serve teams, are the ones who are like really growing and thriving. And then the last thing I'll say is just like, I was trying to like think of a clever pastor way to say it, but just basically let God define the win in your season. And just how like for us, like we started the year with a lot of big hopes and dreams about what we wanted to do, and a lot of those honestly have not materialized. But in this season, we've also made a lot of progress in areas that we didn't even think about. The fact that we were able to kind of renovate our chapel for like a great like in-person experience, like the stage and our sound system, different things like that. We were able to do that because we weren't meeting. And so like, here's this thing that we did not anticipate, and then God like swooped in, gave us the opportunity, and that became like the win of that season. Or like going online is another big one, where that was not a part of our 2020 vision really at all. I mean, kind of, we were talking about that, but like it wasn't a serious, and then all of a sudden it became a huge need, and the Lord just worked it out to where like right as pandemic was kind of coming, like we were investing in that, and then all of a sudden now we're online and able to like broadcast the gospel to everyone on the internet. And so just like letting God define the win of your season, and you may have this idea of what the win is, but then just being open and letting God like speak into that, I think is really, really important, you know. So just being open to where he's working and following him like into those places.
Yeah, well, and like I said, man, I think now we're reopened, and so the future is here in this moment. And just like you said, we are in person and online. That's where we're at now. And which funny story. So I mean, our vision for the year was bold invitations, and like you said, it did not materialize like we thought it would. But it still happened. I mean, probably there's nothing more bold. I mean, some of the things we've done in this season is, number one, we've gained an appreciation for gathering together. We're now in person and online, which means more people can see it and be a part of it. And three, we've invested in our groups and in our room and some of our facilities here for those invitations to gather in the future. And so it worked out. You know, God, I guess sometimes you think it's a season of fruit, and maybe God's trying to plant some seeds. And I think in this season, we've definitely planted some seeds, man. So, but I love you, man. I'm thankful for you. And the good thing is, man, like we've gone through it all together as a team, as a staff team, elder team. And like I was saying on Sunday, man, like I know it's been crazy, but we're still here. Yeah. That says a lot. Listen, we are open. We went through this, we're open, meaning like we closed down, but we reopened. And so we're alive, man. Yeah. And you can join us this Sunday in person or online. And man, we're inviting, man, if you're someone who's like comfortable, you're kind of thinking about like, just come try it for one Sunday. Like we promise you, we're going to try to make it as good of environment as possible. We've got a lot has happened behind the scenes to make it a safe and good environment for all of us. Bring your mask, come on in, worship alongside of us every Sunday at 10 a.m. But thank you guys for watching, and we hope to see you next time on Real Talk.